Made sure I hit recording this time. Didn't want to stream like I did the last couple of times. I fucked this up. Hit the wrong button and started streaming. That's no good.
Don't accidentally stream again.
I didn't. I hit record this time. Hello there, my lovely Legionnaires. I wanted to start this video with a definitive statement. I am not a furry. I never have been. I think the community has always been interesting, though. I have no furry hate. I am hardly going to be one to tell you with my 7,000 characters that making a funky character that's another species is cringe. I mean, look at me. I'm an eldritch god. What the fuck am I supposed to say? I've been a lurker on the outskirts of a lot of communities, and the furry community is definitely one of them. I like to watch their goings-on and learn about them. There's value in knowing about how other people have their fun. It means that you can connect with more people and expand things that you do in order to include as many people as possible. You never know what you can learn. And today, the thing I learned about and wanted to share with you were original species. These have always been something I've been a little intrigued by. Naturally, as an artist, I've bumped into closed and open species all around the internet as long as there's been a space where art communities can grow. A closed species, if you're not one of the internet dwellers, is a community revolving around a species that you have to pay money for in order to have an OC. Personally, between you and me, I've never really liked closed species. I don't know, I think they essentially have the same scummy vibe as NFTs, where essentially you're just buying a ticket to say that you can do something, which, in a space that's meant to be someplace fun for artists to grow and make their own original characters and bond over a community, having a paywall to join a fandom just feels weird to me. I'm not gonna go out of my way to hate on anybody, but personally, it's never really been my thing. Which is why I think the thing I'm more interested are open species. It's the same verse as before, where there's a list of things and a kind of character that you can make, but you don't have to pay for it. There's just a list of rules and a bunch of character traits that you can use so that you can make your own characters and participate in some fun group storytelling or OC making together. And I think that's more fun. You build a more diverse community and you can allow everyone to join it instead of people who simply pay you a designated amount of money. So today, we're going to be talking about open species. In fact, I made 10 characters from 10 various open species that were both selected by the community, and a few that I found myself. So let's take a stab at making our own characters. So first up we have Ampwaves. Ampwaves were created by Slumber Yodi and Wild Dog Beasts in 2016. These guys are one of the more interesting designs for me because they have a really cool bat vibe, and since they revolve around sound, I thought that that was a really cool choice. I don't know if they're supposed to be bats, though. I think they're supposed to be a little more dog. I'm not entirely sure. Apparently they don't actually communicate with their mouths. They make sounds out of the speakers in their ears, and the zipper mouth just controls their volume. I think that's pretty neat. I like the idea of them evolving mouths sort of just to, like, blend in with other creatures to not be quite so unsettling. They reproduce by plugging their tails into other mechanical devices, and then those devices turn into baby Ampwaves, which I think is a really radical form of asexual reproduction. A lot of the species have, like, stipulations that they don't have, like, sex organs, or that they don't reproduce sexually, or that kind of thing, but I think I've only seen two, this one and the Manokit, that, like, very expressly talk about how their species reproduces or don't, like, hand wave it away with magic. And I think that's really cool. They also don't talk. They communicate by tuning radio waves into sentences, so it's kind of crow-like. The example they give on the sheet I looked at was that they said, like, bumblebee, but the first thing I think of are, like, kenku, who communicate like soundboards. I think that's cool. They also don't have 4 arms as a default, by the way, but I saw that they could have an extra set, and I couldn't resist that. That seemed really cool. One of the things I was really drawn to with these guys was that they weren't just 2 animals smashed together. It was a totally original concept from the ground up, and I absolutely love them. There was a really great guide on them as well that gave a lot of in-depth information, really went into the nitty-gritty of how they're made, how they work, here are their traits, etc., etc. So it was really easy to make one. All the information was correlated into one place, and it felt really great. There wasn't a lot of, like, lore information in the place I looked, but I found some other info elsewhere. So it's a little scattered, but I think if you just want to make a character, I think this is a great spot for them. The one I made, I named Argos, and I noticed while looking at references that most of the amps I saw were techno-themed, like they had a music techno theme, which makes sense. because even just from looking inside the window at the furry community, it seems like EDM, techno, and like house music are more their speed. I see a lot of like raves and the like. But I wanted to go a different direction. I thought it'd be fun to make an amp that's more hair metal, classic rock. So I gave him long, fluffy hair, this big jacket, star-shaped screen. Very glam rock Freddy. I had some glam rock animatronic vibes. I used gold accents to really make those pop because his color scheme was really dark. And I'm only now realizing that I forgot to draw the plug hand. Fuck. Pretend it's one of the bottom ones. I'm not a moron. I'll do it another day. Don't worry. I think he's the kind of guy who throws impromptu concerts wherever he can. He definitely plays guitar, and I feel like he's very loud. I think he's friendly, but definitely the kind of person that's simply a lot. Next up, I went with Astral Myconids. This is a species that's created by Sarah Proto, who I specifically wanted to shout out real fast, because her videos were how I found a good chunk of these. I loved watching her videos, not only to find new species to draw, but also to do some research for this video. A couple of the ones that my audience suggested, I watched her videos on them. I wanted to draw species that sounded cool, and shout out one of my main research tools, so when I saw that she had her own species, I absolutely wanted to give making a Myconid a try. So, to give you a brief synopsis, Astral Myconids are actually a species of mushroom that latches onto an animal host and then proceeds to puppet them cordyceps style. Love the concept. Wanted to give it a shot immediately. The fact that they form a really interesting relationship alongside giving you more freedom in terms of what kind of animal you pick is definitely appealing, because a lot of these open species have a very basic template, and it feels like a lot of the ones I saw, justifiably so, because they give you bases, are just sort of recolors of the same base shape, so their silhouettes don't change particularly. But something I really liked about Myconid is that because it takes over a different animal, you can have completely different silhouettes from creature to creature, and I thought that was really cool. It also has, because the fungal network is forcibly pumping the heart and massaging their brains, it's got this element of body horror that goes with it that I absolutely adore. So, I was all over it. When I was told I could pick any animal I wanted, I knew I had to pick something abnormal. I was not gonna pick like a fox or a dog or something basic. So I picked an aardvark. I thought they were a fun shape to begin with. I knew it'd make a cute, chubby little girl. I was right. Look at how cute she is. I just wanted to do something that was a little abnormal, a little funky, a little fresh. And I love her. I absolutely adore her. Her name's Rosette. I liked the idea of the mushroom antennae curving down rather than standing up and over, because I didn't want it to compete with her ears, which stand straight up. And then I gave her the long side bangs to layer interest across her very well. I like the idea that her hooves are made of hardened mycelium rather than the keratin, so they're the same color and they glow in the dark, Jesus. It makes it hard for her to sleep unless she's fully covered up, I think. I like the idea of her, like, laying in bed completely covered and you can just see the faint outline of her little hands and her little feetsies just glowing in the dark. I think she's really a sweetie who wants to be an idol, but she's struggling deeply with stage fright and social anxiety, and I think that that's precious. Next up were fun. These are Drekbus, I think is how you say it, Drekbus. These little scamps were created by Caravel. They're a funky little mammalian species that are more magical rather than alien. Reading all their lore, they feel like something I'd find in the Feywild. I think they're supposed to be aliens. I think they're from another planet, but they have more of like a fantasy vibe to me. They're described as being feline pretty frequently, but to me they look more like funky little goblin bunnies, and they're actually descended from dragons, I think? So they're really silly. I like them. I think they're really cool. They all have magic cat skull masks they can dismiss at will that are custom to them. There's a lot of cool lore like that throughout them. I don't want to get into all of it since I'd rather you go check them out for yourselves, but they can do magic, obviously. They come in a variety of sizes. They have a solid range of choices you can make for your character, little things you can customize and change. The website has a lot of great guides, ability to make a little birth certificate even, which I thought was cute, and a lot of links to base resources, which is great. quite a few of these resource guides don't have enough information, and I have to go digging, so I really appreciated all of it correlated in a very nice, easy to read, and visually very clear source. That was really cool. The Dreki I made is named Lichen. I decided I wanted to make a small species, so I made a lesser. He's about 2 feet tall, and I had this idea of this funky little merchant who is totally trustworthy, guys. I don't know what you mean. I gave him lopped ears, which, for those of you who don't know the bunny anatomy, it means that they're droopy. And I gave him aniscoria, which means that one of his pupils is bigger than the other. And I gave him a prosthetic horn that's made out of, like, polished metal, which I think he has because he made a bad deal with something a little bigger than him and fucked around and found out. I just like the visual storytelling there. I like being able to do silly little things like that. Since it says they have an affinity for certain kinds of magic, I think Lichens is plants, of course, naturally, like his namesake. He makes funky little salves, potions, poisons that he sells to various other people. I just liked the idea of a little goblin boy scurrying around and selling his funky little potables that do exactly what he says they do at all times, and totally not only if he feels like pulling a prank on you or if he likes you. I never got around to drawing his mask, but I should. I think that's probably decorated too. Maybe if I draw him, after this video comes out, I'll draw his mask as well. Next are the Fennecs. These guys were created by the River of Stars. These guys are obviously based on the Fennec fox, but they're an alien species from the desert moon of Sahara. They're subterranean species. They live in ruins underneath the sand. Their dual ears are for picking up as many frequencies as they can, while also tapping into various different environmental factors, like the temperature, the air pressure. I've noticed a few different species intentionally leave aside sexual dimorphism, which I think is kind of neat. It means that any gender can have any body type, which really allows for great customization. On the card, the website where these are, is a list of freebie bases, but it seems like a lot of the lore is under construction since the species isn't that old, so there's not a whole lot of resources in terms of, like, narrative stuff. It's got a really good start, and I'd recommend it, and it does give really great guides on how to make them, so I wouldn't say that it was particularly difficult to find information, but there's just not as much information as I'd have liked. For mine, I called her Jackie, Jack, -E, and I don't know why I was so determined to give her this jack-o'-lantern fur pattern, but for some reason I colored her orange and it was all I could think of, so I did. I made her a bit of a tomboy. I had this idea of her being kind of an inventor. I thought that would add to that. Since archaeology and this idea of exploring ruins of their past seems to be a big focus of Fennecs, I liked this idea of her trying to reverse engineer old tech into something new. I think she pushes frequently to adopt the future and not just the past. Maybe she's a bit of an outcast for that. Her antennae aren't visible, since I liked the idea that she slicks them back into her long, big, fluffy hair. I wanted to give her all these piercings in her big ol' ears to kind of further other her a little bit. I think she seems like a really cool gal, personally. She's one of my favorites of these designs. I was recommended to check out Manokits, and I love these little sharky guys! Originally, they were created by Dubmutt, but now I guess the species is owned by Yoskavel? I don't know how that works. I'm not a furry. There's probably some intricacies here that I'm not aware of. It's fine. Manokits are an amphibious species that are a mix of fox and shark, despite them having raptor-like bodies? I don't know. I think they're cool. There's 3 different varieties. The tribal, which are the ones that walk on 2 legs. They're the more anthropomorphized version. The beach dweller, which is the one that has, like, the raptor-y anatomy, and then the holo, I think they're called. They're the ones that are on all 4s. The cuties can be based on any kind of fish, so they can have any kind of funky tail and fin type. One of the things I enjoyed a bunch is that because they're deep sea dwellers, they squint when they're up on land because it's really dark at the bottom of the ocean and it's really bright in the sunlight. I liked that attention to detail. It helped give a lot of more, personality, made their faces stand out a little bit more than some of the others. I also like that because they also reproduce asexually, they're the other species that does so, and they can reproduce by any pair of partners finding a hollow object like a coconut, and they do their funky little magic ritual, and then they crack the coconut open and there's a baby inside. I don't know, I thought that was really cute. I love that piece of lore. That's really sweet. They have a really good vibe. My main complaint is that their information's nested in several different Twitter posts if you don't watch Sarah's video, so it's a little tough to get to all of it. I'd organize information a little better, maybe. That's all personally. Just make a card, I think, is the best way to do it. My little duder is named Squeak. Since the design docs said they could have any particular fish fin or shape, I wanted to go with a tuna again, like I did with Meg. I think they have a really dynamic silhouette that's really fun to draw with the very long top and bottom fins and their little tail spikes, because I thought that that would really help vary him up, make him look a little different than the base, like, shark form. I also really like the color pattern that they have, not necessarily the colors, but I liked the pattern that they have as well, and I thought that I could do some fun things with that. I think Squeak is really fast in the water, but very awkward and klutzy on land. Give it very penguin vibes, I think. Picking his color palette took me fucking forever. I waffled on how I wanted to color him a bit. I knew I wanted to keep with the tuna pattern, but I didn't want the colors to look too tuna, but the color palette I was working with ended up looking a little too tuna. I might end up changing some of these. He might end up having some orange in here somewhere at some point. I don't know. I like it, but I think I could tweak it a little bit. I also read that they like to accessorize with various things they swipe from the water on the beach, and immediately I had this thought about him loving to swipe floaties, inner tubes, anything that lets him bounce and or float. I think he steals them and then decorates his home with floaties by tying seaweed to them and then tying them to rocks, so his house is basically always covered in balloons. He wears them on land all the time because he falls down a bunch and they cushion his fall. I thought it was cute. I just like the idea of him bumping into things or falling over and then like the way they do in the cartoons when they're wearing a big inner tube where he'll fall down and then just kind of roll down the hill. I don't know, that seemed really funny to me. Next we had Pan-Can, which were created by CF Studios. This is an interesting one. It's a toucan combined with a red panda. That's it. It doesn't seem from the research that there's a whole lot of lore, so I don't have a lot to talk about. It seems like there's not a lot of information for them, so I'm going to chat about that, I think. It seems, again, a lot of decentralized information. Half of what I found was on Amino, the other half on Fur Affinity, which is kind of a problem because Amino's a fucking bitch to navigate, and Fur Affinity's... Fur Affinity... I like the concept overall. I'm a big fan of non-traditional griffins. I really like the idea of combining them, making them walk on two legs, combining these really interesting elements together. It was really cool. And I've also noticed, and I wanted to point it out specifically with Pan-Cans, that a few of these are very clearly designed with the intent of being fursuits, which is why I think a lot of them have very similar silhouettes when they're anthropomorphic. And I think that's fine. It's just something I noticed. And then I thought that Pan-Cans were one of the best ones in that category, specifically that a lot of the things about their design lend really well to being a costume. And I realized that it's probably that way because CF Studios designed fursuits professionally. So it's a great application of your skills to make something really cool for the community that looks good as a costume and as an illustration, I guess. The one I made was named Flurry. I toyed around with the idea of sticking more directly to like a realistic bird color palette. In the end, I just thought it'd be fun to lean into something fantastic, especially since I love working with pinks. I thought that the round shapes I was going to get out of the neck floof, the heavy tail, the big paws, I thought I'd do the same with the hair. So I gave that really big, heavy braid in the back, and then the smaller one in the front. I had such a problem with the wings. You saw that during the sketch segment. The arm wings are something I've always had issue with because of perspective. Most of these aren't, like, realistic with their proportions, most of the references I saw, but I like to try, mainly from my own practice. Another thing is that most furries don't dress their characters. I'm assuming it's because they're meant to be suits, right? Or maybe it's has something to do with them being more animalistic. I don't know. But most of them don't have outfits, but I don't have any interest in suiting, and I like making OCs, and one of the best parts about making OCs is playing dress up, so I gave her a cute little outfit. This was fun to try and work around the arm wings and still give her something that was breezy and allowed for the mobility. I just thought it would be really cool overall. All of the furry legionnaires and the new furries watching knew that I was going to make a Protogen. Of course I was. It was the most recommended. I saw these bitches everywhere, so I had to do it. I had to make one. So Protogens are the free version of Primogens, not to be confused with Primogems. Both of these created by Cedar Andrews. And I'm gonna be honest, I like the Protogen more. I think their simplistic base design is a lot better for customization. I think that they just are a more honed version of the Primogen design. I don't know, maybe I'm biased because I didn't have to pay for this one. I don't know. I just feel like I wouldn't pay much more for this, but bigger and more complicated. I don't know. They're a cyborg species that are half mechanical, half biological. Their prime feature are the screens they use both as faces and decorations on their shoulders and hips. I think they have a really strong silhouette, and I really like them. I think that's what draws people to them, that and the LED masks. I had a good time drawing mine. I love them all together. I think they're really cool. I get why they're so popular. They have a really cool look. Feels like something you'd see in the background of a cool cyberpunk setting. The one I made, I named Silak. I went with an overall shark energy. Once again, nobody fucking dresses their characters up, but I liked the idea of him having this really tight cyberpunk fit. When it came to the visor, I knew I didn't want him to have a mouth, mainly because I felt like it looked a little more alien. Most of the things I do to make sure that I don't look exactly like everything else, and I just found some things I thought would be interesting. I went with the X's and null signs as the projections on his body because, I don't know, I thought it'd be cool. That's it. That's really the whole reason. I liked the shape that these guys have, so I wanted clothes that would emphasize it. Kept wide hips with baggy pants, but kept more of a shape of solid up top with the cropped jacket, so he ended up, like, feeling a little fuller. Didn't quite feel so bottom heavy. I think he's cool. I think he might be some kind of, like, cop or vigilante, maybe some kind of, like, street samurai. I don't know. This is a man who fights a bunch is the vibe, I think. If I'm gonna draw any of these guys again, he's definitely gonna be one of them. Here's one I grabbed purely because I thought it'd be funny to draw. Here's Sodalpacas from Indie Alpaca, who you might have seen on TikTok because they're a fellow VTuber. Hi, Indie. Indie made the species purely as lore for their own VTuber and then let other people make their own characters, and I can't lie to you, it's funny as hell, and I endorse the fuck out of it. Sodalpacas are pretty straightforward. They're alpacas who drink so much soda it changes them fundamentally. There it is. Was written on the tin. I don't got much more for you. Not a lot of lore. That's it. So I'm just gonna talk about it for a little while. I love this original species. It's really silly. It's got great energy, fun vibes. It's the type of animal I don't see that often. Alpaca's a hell of a choice. It was really fun to try and draw an alpaca. And as you can tell from most of these, I really value species that give you a large amount of freedom to do something really out there and creative. And I can tell from Indie that this is like a really just great vibe. My girl is named Kai Judy. Because naturally her beverage of choice is Monster. I've never drank a Monster once in my life because I cannot stand the way they smell, let alone the way they taste. But I had this image in my head immediately and I couldn't stop myself. I had to draw a punk rocker who headbangs with all of her long-ass neck. Torn clothes, third finger so she can rock out, pop tab earrings, whole shebang. I ended up really having fun with this color palette too. All these funky shades of neon green and black accents are not normally my thing, but I had a really great time. Lightning bolt shades for the energy theme, had to. She's loud, a lot of fun. She's a little smelly from all the sweat she builds up at shows, moshing so hard she clears a 2-foot circle at every concert. Love it. Her immaculate vibes. Listen, I know Squirmles are another goofy one, but look at them! What was I supposed to do? So at the height of the worm on the string resurgence, Kun Mao decided that they'd just take all the wiggly guys and make them a furry. I can't blame them. The design's cute, I love it, I thought worm on a string was funny. This is great. No lore, silly vibes. I love the idea of this one so deeply you don't even know, because it's great to see a community just come together for something so funky and strange and fun. Lots of people were wormifying themselves during the apex of the craze, so of course it made sense to turn it into a furry species. I don't know, I just think this was really cool. I thought this was funny. This is a really sweet vibe, and I love all of the artwork I saw, so I had to get in. I had to get on the ground floor. Squirmle stocks were high. So the man I made is named Poppin', and I knew exactly what I wanted to do immediately. The goal was arcade carpet, and I did it. I went with a black base, rainbow speckles. In my head, they're holographic, so he is very aggressively sparkly. His little green belly, paws, jacket, all of that glows in the dark. He likes to stick his whole snoot into big gulps full of cherry Slurpee and drinks it like water. He's good at DDR and skee-ball despite his tiny limbs, so you can commonly find him hanging out at the local arcade, hoarding tickets in his massive coat. You open that like a watch collector, and it's just pockets inside of pockets, just bursting at the seams with tickets, with coins, with the cards you get from coin pushers, the whole deal. He's 100% the kind of guy who hoards coins and tickets until he can get himself a Switch, then proceeds to get hundreds of dollars worth of candy and just sits in a corner and shares it with his friends. I don't know. I wanted a silly little man, and I made a silly little man. Our final species were synths, a species designed by Vader-san. These are dragonoid androids that are fully modular. It means you can take them apart and give them whatever kinds of mods or upgrades you want. It seems like while they're fully robotic, they have an artificial skin that makes them squishy to the touch with only a few hard or metal plastic parts, and since every part of them can be taken apart and rebuilt, it means that they have every ability to change themselves from the ground up whenever they wish, for whatever purpose they need. You need anchor arms to move house? Boom! You want skinny legs for dancing? Bam! You want to be masked today and femme tomorrow? You got it! Just change your chest pieces. It's pretty flexible, and there's a lot of really interesting lore and creative choices here. These in particular gave themselves a reason to not wear clothing even, because their body parts are interchangeable at any given point. They are the fashion statement. Their very body is the fashion statement. You can tell that Vader had a lot of really cool ideas and was more than ready to share them. A quick little funny aside, how do you know you're asexual? Well, while I was reading the synths, they talked about how they had smooth but still squishy skin, so that they weren't just all hard plastic. And the first thing I thought was, yes, it's because they're dragonoids, so they have to have, like, kind of smooth, like, reptilian skin. I get it, that's cool. And then I kept working, and about maybe 5 to 10 minutes later, I thought about it again and went, oh, it's probably for something not safe for work, isn't it? And I was right. You know, just had a moment. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it being not safe for work. I just didn't think about it at all. I'm simply very stupid. It's fine. Don't worry about it. So my synth is named Lemonade, spelled L3M0N8. She's a performer who has modeled herself to be nothing if not the peak of style. Wanted to go with an old school toy vibe. Basically, I kind of modeled her after the idea of being like a girl transformer, like an action figure that you'd market to girls. Her shoulder pads, hip pads, tail fluff, head fluff, and the horns are not real. They're instead light projections so that they can billow in the wind even when there is none. The false fluff is to make her stand out from the rest of her community, but also she doesn't have to maintain it like she would if she installed like parts that had real fur. She 100% tries to flip her hair, fucks up, and just runs her hand through the projection. I picture she's a little dumb, a little ditzy. I feel like she has a glitter sound effect that she plays whenever she strikes a pose in public. Silly, ditzy little girl out here to make everyone smile. It was the first thing I thought of, and I thought that was really cool. And that's it! 10 new fun little characters that I get to add to my pockets. It was a fun experience, a little personal challenge. I got to learn about some cool new creative things, and I got to work on drawing some more animal anatomy. I'd love to do this again and draw some more open species, or maybe, if you're interested, maybe I'll make my own original species, so that way you can make your own characters. If you're interested in either of those, feel free to let me know in the comments. In the description, I've left links on information to all of the species that I've drawn in case your interest is piqued, to my editor, and to, of course, my own socials and the like. For now, though, that's all I have for you, so I'll see you again in the next video. Goodbye!